Welcome, welcome, welcome. Folks, we just saw, the definition of a stinker. Mets losing 5-0. Sean Manaea just imploding in the sixth inning. And, folks, Sean Manaea pitched very well up into the sixth inning, but there were kind of signs that things would go awry. He was relying a little too much on his off speed, throwing sweepers outside, wasn't throwing the fastball, wasn't locating the fastball. There were signs. Kind of thought that Carlos Mendoza would take him out way before damage would get done. Didn't happen. I know the pitch count was very low, and I think we were looking a little too much at the pitch count. Nonetheless, Guardians jumped out to a tremendous lead. The Mets would fight back. We're going to go over some key parts of the comeback. We're going to go over some key parts of the second half of this game. The Guardians made some misplays that allowed the Mets to capitalize. Alonso, great game, phenomenal game. Clap, clap. One home run away from 252. My guy, Alonso. So very happy about that. But I'm telling you, the Mets had this game, folks. The Mets had this game. Now, I got a list of plays, moves specifically that, were questionable. Brett Beatty, we know at the end of the game, would make a costly error. He would come into the game in the seventh inning because Mauricio, to lead off an inning, was subbed out for Marte, a pinch hitter. I mean, why Marte's coming in at that point in the game? Nobody's on base, no outs. Why are you taking the young kid out who's a better defensive guy in a close game? That came back to obviously bite the New York Mets. Then let's go to the ninth inning. Let us go to the ninth inning where the Mets, it's 5-5, and the Mets could win a phenomenal game. The Mets came back from 5 down, and the Mets had it right in front of them to win. So the inning starts off like this. You have Francisco Alvarez hitting a rope up the middle, single, gets on base. So you bring in Tyrone Taylor, you put him on first base, sub him in for Francisco Alvarez, pinch runner. Makes all the sense in the world. Get a ball down the line, you got to have legs in there, so obviously they'll be able to score. So on the very next batter, you get Brandon Nimmo striking out. Then you have Francisco Lindor up. Now you have Tyrone Taylor at first base. And what do you know? He hits a ball down the right field line. Now we already have one out, and the ball's trickling down to the right field corner. Guy fields it, throws it in, and, I swear he's going to be sent. You want to know why? It's the winning run. If he gets thrown out on the plate, all right, those are the chances you take. There's no guarantee. That's, I heard Carlos Mendoza on the press conference. Well, I got Soto up. I got Alonso up. Well, if you're thinking Carlos Mendoza, you gotta figure the other manager is going to walk Soto, which ended up happening. And then you're going to have Pete Alonso face, a very good fireballer. And, I'm not saying, Pete's having a phenomenal game, but for Pete to strike out, that's not out of the realm. It's not out of the realm, right? So, the answer in the press conference, like, oh, I had Soto and I had Alonso coming up, that was the right move. First of all, there's no guarantee they're going to get a hit. I think that the chance of that run, that perfect throw, remember, you got to make a perfect throw from the outfield. Past first base. I mean, folks, I would have done that every day of the week after this type of comeback. So it would happen. You intentionally walk Cade Smith, intentionally walks Juan Soto. Pete Alonso strikes out. Jeff McNeil's up. Lines out to the shortstop, Gabriel Arias, and that would end the inning. But, folks, my opinion, I know it's Monday morning quarterbacking, but I would have sent them. I mean, you only have Tyrone Taylor in that game because for his legs. That was the reason why you substituted him in for Alvarez, for his legs. For his legs. I mean, and any play was going to be bang, bang, was going to be close. I mean, that's the situation we're in, folks. We were trying to steal one. We're trying to steal one in this situation. It's not going to be, the third base coach. You're not going to have a home run there. So at the end of the day, we didn't get our opportunity in the ninth. You got Ryan Helsley coming in for the 10th inning. Maybe we would have an opportunity for the 10th. No. We start off the 10th, walking Ramirez. That's a fair move. Ramirez is obviously the best hitter. And then the second play in the 10th inning was a disaster. You got David Fry bunting it, and you have Beatty fielding it, and he goes to second. That's a fair play. You want to cut off Ramirez going to second, get a double play possibly, at least cut off the guy going to second. The ball ends up being a little wide. I thought Lindor was a little lapsadaisical around the bag. I'll be honest. Even Todd Zeal, I checked out the post game. He even said Lindor could have got himself in a better position to at least stop the ball. So, I'm going to put that on Lindor, a Gold Glove guy. Well, I'm going to put on Beatty as well, but I'm going to put it on the both of them. You got to do everything in your power to keep the ball in the infield. Again, Beatty, bad throw as well. But Lindor, you gotta put yourself in a better position. The way he approached second base was extremely lapsadaisical for that type of situation. Go back, look at the replay, and we already know Lindor made a misplay. Throw down to second base a couple innings earlier. That cost us as well. He did that a couple games ago. I mean, Lindor, our Gold Glover, is being very, very, lapsadaisical at second base. Around second base, around shortstop. I'm not very impressed with the way Lindor is going about his craft at this moment. Had a couple nice hits tonight, right? Not going to take that away from him, but he's a defensive guy first. He even tells you he's a defensive guy first. So not very impressed with Lindor. Not very impressed with the Mets overall. If you go to June 1st to right now, it's 55 games if I did my math right, and I quite possibly wouldn't be surprised if I did it wrong, but the Mets are 1 game under 500. 1 game under 500 in a 55-game span. That's not good. That is not good. What's up, Patrick? Will, Joseph? Yep. Taylor, I think that was a chance willing to take sending him. That's what really stood out to me. Lindor's kind of lapsadaisical play the last couple of games. That has stood out to me. And also, I see him as a leader. And I see a problem kind of on this team. I'm looking at this and I'm seeing a problem. Mets losing a lot of games lately. And again, that 55-game sample, that kind of speaks for himself. You're an under 500 team. You're an under 500 team as we speak. Manaea, again, pitching great, solid 5 innings, but he lost it quick. And if anybody who was watching that top of the 6th inning, he was throwing a lot of sweepers, a lot of off-speed pitches. It kind of looked like he was tired. But you're looking at the pitch count, and if you're Mendoza, he's got a low pitch count. But then again, he's not throwing any fastballs, and then he throws a fastball. It's 90 to 92 miles per hour. So we're definitely not seeing the Manaea of last year. Last year, Manaea was getting it to the mid-90s. He had more control of the fastball. And when you have better control of the fastball, better location, then it makes that sweeper pitch that much more devastating. So by the top of the 6th inning, it looked like he was basically done. You had, in that inning, what did you have? You had a hit by the pitch. He hit a batter. He had a wild pitch. So there were signs well before the 3-run homer, that this guy is out of gas. So then obviously you have Gabriel Arias. he has a bomb, a 3-run bomb, and that made it 5-zip. That made it 5-zip. So my opinion, you have Carlos Mendoza, should have had a much quicker hook. But you're looking at the pitch count. It's not all about the pitch count. You got to see how the guy's pitching. If he's floating in sweepers because he can't control his fastball, doesn't have a feel for the fastball, doesn't matter how many pitches he's thrown. Your offense is struggling mightily in terms of consistency. So you can't get to a big, you can't let the team, obviously the Guardians, get out to a big lead. It just can't happen. Now the Mets, luckily, were able to put some runs on the board. It was actually, I don't want to say surprising, but you want to see how the Mets respond. So in the bottom of the 6th inning, you got Francisco Lindor leading off, and this is more or less the top of the lineup. He strikes out. Then you got Juan Soto. He strikes out. Lindor strikes out. This is the thing. It's a wild pitch. So third pitch striking out. Everybody knows this as a little leaguer. Drop third strike, or it passes the catcher. Run to first base. So even though it's a strikeout, Lindor gets on first. Thank you, Guardians. Thank you, Guardians. Next batter up, Juan Soto reaches on a fielder's choice. A fielding error by the second baseman goes under his glove. Thank you, Guardians. Thank you, Guardians. So we have 2 very good gifts by the Guardians in the bottom of the 6th inning. And then you have Pete Alonso. And Pete Alonso, I believe it was like a fastball towards the inner half of the plate. And this shows you how strong Pete Alonso is. It almost looked like Pete Alonso kind of didn't double clutch, but he definitely put his elbow in like he was getting jammed, and it still got out. I mean, on a night where the ball didn't seem like it was traveling, besides Urias and Alonso, those two hits, I mean, Pete Alonso really kind of showed what type of power hitter he is. And on the night, Alonso had a night. And we said it a couple of nights ago how Alonso looked like he was getting hot. Tonight, 4 hits, 4 RBIs, and it was all Pete. Offensively, it was all Pete. So he hit a 3-run homer, made it 5-3. Again, courtesy of the Guardians. It should have only been 5-1. But the Mets sliced into the lead big time. Then you go to the 8th inning, and in the 8th inning, the Mets would put a couple more runs on the board. Again, top of the lineup starts it off. Lindor, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso gets an RBI single. Jeff McNeil singles on a sharp line drive, and then Mark Vientos sac fly that ties up the game. So the offense looked good in spurts. This was a winnable game. You go to the 9th inning, you have that Tyrone Taylor play. You didn't send him. All right. 10th inning, error by Beatty. They scored 2 runs. This kind of pulled at my heartstrings because, you saw a great performance by Alonso. He was kind of had the team on his back. Manaea had a rough game. Hopefully, you like to pick up pitchers in these type of situations. Diaz came in the 9th. Great performance. I didn't mention that, but Diaz, great performance in the 9th. Lets up a leadoff single and, gets around it. Really gets around it. 2 strikeouts and a pop-up. That was a great performance by Diaz in the top of the 9th. You had a lot of great things from the bottom of the 6th inning on. A lot of great things, and it just didn't happen today. It just did not happen. Tommy, you're right. All the Mets done. Can they recover? I'm a Red Sox fan, but I follow the Mets since 2019. I'm worried they'll collapse hard. Well, the thing is, the Mets have been struggling since June 1st. June 1st, they've played 1 game under 500. So I don't think that this team is anywhere near collapsed. Way too talented. You got guys who should be hitting up and down the lineup, from Alonso to Lindor to Soto to, Nimmo had a bad game today, strikeout king. So you got way too much talent. And then you got some pitching talent, and you just went to go rebolster your bullpen. So there's way too much talent in this team for an overall collapse, but it is definitely a concern. And, I just, a lot of times, it just takes a couple plays. Sometimes there's a lack of energy in the clubhouse. Last year, Iglesias, he brought in that extra energy. Sometimes there's bad calls by the manager, and that like affects the team in a bad way. Not saying it's that, but just like that, just like there could be one little instance that takes this team in the wrong direction, the Mets could string a couple wins together like they do. Very streaky team. Win 7, now lose 6 out of 7. And this has happened 2 or 3 times where you go on a winning streak and then go on a losing streak. And then at the end of the day, you're a 500 team. So again, I think there's going to be struggles, but I think the Mets have enough talent on this team. If their leadership is making the right calls, making the right decisions, there is no excuse. Folks, there is no excuse. You got a $300+ million team. Stearns, what did Mendoza say he needed? I needed a bullpen. That's what he needed. He needed a bullpen. All right, I'm going to invest prospects. Now you got yourself a bullpen. Offense was supposed to be the one given, right? So that's been the struggle. The one given hasn't been a given. And then your starting rotation, the starting rotation that carried you in the beginning of the season has been letting you down as of late. So, that's what you need. You need consistency from the offense, and you need your starters to perform at a higher level. And Tommy, if you're a Red Sox fan, I got to say, you got a very exciting team. They got a lot of great prospects, a lot of great young talent on that team. So that's going to be a very exciting franchise to watch. I know they made that Devers trade, but they got a lot of great young prospects. So that's going to be a fun team to watch, especially if they make some right decisions. I mean, Bregman would have been a nice piece for the Mets. A lot of people say that. So you guys are lucky that you made that move. That's good. Garrett Crochet, that was a nice piece. Wish that the Mets would have, I don't know. I wish a lot of things the Mets would have done differently, but we are where we are. We still have a lot of talent, and we still have a lot of season left, and we're still we're game and a half out of first place. I'm just checking Garrett Crochet, 12-4, 4.6 wins above replacement, 2.23 ERA. The funny Master, I was gonna put a video about this the other day. They're playing with their heads up their ass syndrome. I mean, honestly, the leaders on this team, it's again very lackluster. You got Mendoza and Lindor. Those are the two leaders. On the field, you got Lindor. Who's the other? Maybe you got Nimmo. Nimmo's been the longest tenured Met. But Lindor, I don't know. Is it just me that when he's running to first base, he's pulling up? When he's taking ground balls, he doesn't have his glove down. I don't see the same, I don't see the same effort that I saw last year when he was having his MVP season. It just might be me noticing things that, you go through Little League and this is how they teach you to play. And then when you get to a pro, you just, you kind of lose those, you lose those tendencies. But I saw that from Lindor last year. I really did. This year, he's not carrying himself on the field in the same way. And I'm noticing it based, mostly after his injury. So I don't know if he still has some of the toe injury that he's dealing with, or if that really messed up his mechanics. I like to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it is really noticeable. And the fact that he can't get his glove down on the throw to second base, I mean, that's 2 in the last couple games that he should have at least stopped. You got to at least stop the ball. You can't let it go into the outfield. I mean, those are Little League plays. And we're talking about not even a Gold Glove guy. He's won Gold Gloves, Platinum Gloves. I mean, these are, I don't want to say easy plays, but these are pretty basic plays for a Gold Glover. Hey, Will, Vientos should not be on the field anywhere. He's a DH. Well, you know what? That brings up another point. We got to get Pete some rest at DH. You saw how Pete looked very refreshed. So in those games that you put Pete on the DH position, where you gonna put where you gonna put Vientos? Third base, I'd rather have Ronnie there every single day of the week. But yeah, I want to see Pete. Give him a couple more days at DH. I know the guy likes to be in at first base. Like Pete loves to play ball, right? Pete loves to play ball. I mean, you got a couple guys in this team signed to long-term contracts, right? Nimmo, Soto, Lindor. Those guys, they're professionals. You would hope that they're giving it their all, but you see a guy in Pete playing for a contract, playing for pride, playing because he bleeds orange and blue. I love that. Nimmo too. Like Nimmo tries his best. I mean, he's not of the level of those other players, but Lindor tries. I mean, I'm sorry, not Lindor. Nimmo tries. Today was just a really, really off game. What's up, Juan? Starting pitchers forgot how to pitch. Yeah, I was trying to like go through the last couple outings of all our starting pitchers. It's something that truly carried us the first couple months of the year, and now it's truly cratering this team as of late. I mean, it's all about pitching, 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 and if we are not, getting like any length from the starters, or if we're getting some length and then you give up 5 runs in the sixth inning, that's not helpful either. That's not helpful either. And the way I'll give Mendoza some credit. I'll give him some credit. There were a lot of things this game that I didn't really like, but the way he kind of deployed the bullpen, you know, assuming that the Mets would score, you put Rayleigh in there, Rogers, Reed Garrett, Diaz. He used the bullpen like he expected the Mets to score, and they did, even though they were down. So I got to give him credit with that. The position players making errors, subbing guys in when I didn't think he should sub guys in. Um, you know, that's a different story. Like Brett Beatty, still, I don't think should have ever been in that game. He was only in that game because you took Mauricio's bat out. You took his bat out, and then who was going to play third? Now you have Brett Beatty in there. So I mean, in my opinion, you got your better defensive guy on the bench, and I don't know why we're taking Mauricio out. Isn't this a young kid that we're trying to grow? And don't you want to expose him to these situations, bigger situations? Like, why are we taking him out at the end of the game? And in the last couple of weeks, one of the few guys who have had big hits. I mean, you just had Mauricio win a game a week ago against the Giants off a decent relief pitcher, and then you take this guy out of the game. One of the few guys who have had late big hits, you take him out. So I mean that kind of made little sense to me, but I'm looking at some of the stats, some of the pitching stats. Like, still overall, the Mets like team ERA is still pretty decent. Still fifth in the major leagues, 3.68 as of late. Obviously not so good. Um, Here's something that it's been bad the last couple of years. Base on ball, the Mets are 27th, 407 base on balls. All right. So you have, I mean, Kodai Senga, last three starts, kind of rough. Last 7 games, he's 2-0 with a 3.71. So that's well above what he was doing in the first half of the year. We know Manaea got kind of rocked today. Montas has had his issues. Um, Holmes just has trouble getting past the fifth. So you got three starters like kind of really struggling. I mean, actually, I'm sorry, like Holmes too. Like he's 2-2 with a 4.46. 2-2 with a 4.46 in the last 7 games. So, I mean, that's not good. Um, well, you know what? David Stern said it, and Andy Martino said it. Will Salmon said it. So you have a lot of writers saying what the Mets strategy is going to be in terms of starting pitchers for the second half of the year. They're going to rely on the kids. They're going to rely on the kids. So you had Dom Hamill come up today. Not that he was, the kids. I mean, he's obviously a prospect, but like that's not part of the Jonah Tongs, the Sproats. He's not of that echelon. But you want to see what this kid could do. The Mets had him. He available for some use out of the bullpen, but it might be sooner rather than later if some of these starters don't start giving us more production. And, at the end of the day, I want to see what some of our young talent can do. And also, too, a rumor that came out, and for all you who haven't seen this yet, the Luis Robert Jr. asking price. The reason why the New York Mets didn't do that trade and they pivoted to Cedric Mullins was because the only thing, and I know Mark Vientos, that was the rumor early on, but the Chicago White Sox then pivoted to Jonah Tong. That was their asking price for Luis Robert Jr. So that's why the Mets didn't do that. But like I figured that would be interesting. So that was the latest asking price. And that's probably why he wasn't moved anywhere. They weren't getting that type of prospect for a guy who struggled mightily in the last couple of years and has been injury prone. But I'll be honest, I'm really not happy right now. I'm really not happy. The Mets they're not giving me that feeling. I mean, last year from June on, I got that feeling where, you know what, this team looks like that, no matter what situation they're going to be in, they'll find a way to come out on top. I'm not getting that feeling right now. I'm hoping that in the next couple games that the Mets will show that magic on the field. The only time I got the feeling was when Alonso was up and you saw the crowd, you heard you felt the energy. I don't know if anybody was in the stadium, but you could just see it through the TV, and that made me excited. I mean, that's the type of energy that hopefully we have all the time. Not even at home, although our record is ridiculously better at home, not as of late, but overall. But the Mets last year again had that feeling that even late August, when we were a couple games behind, it just felt that like we were building, getting better. The pitchers at the end of last year, if everyone remembers, Sean Manaea was getting better towards the end, the last 2 months. Even Quintana's last 5 starts, Severino, the pitching staff was getting hotter and hotter as the season progressed. I think this team is going to go. The offense is too inconsistent. It's going to still really rely on these starting pitchers. It's really going to rely on these starting pitchers. Maybe we don't have to demand 6-7 innings because we have extra options in the pen now, but we need to have a good, solid 5 innings. That's what we need. We need a good 5 to 6. Maybe we should lower our expectations. Just give us 5. We'll hand it to the bullpen. That should be the approach. Just don't, obviously surrender a ridiculous lead to the other team, which, again, that happened this game. We made a great comeback, and we still managed to give it to the other team. And, the reason why it upsets me is because the home field advantage in these extra inning situations is a lot. The way you could situate your closers, the home team has an advantage. And the last couple games that the Mets had this type of situation, they weren't able to pull it out. Again, we have to start utilizing our advantages. I feel like Carlos Mendoza continually gets outmanaged. With that Tyrone Taylor play, when we held them up at third base, it almost feels like Carlos Mendoza never considered that Juan Soto would be walked. I mean, because you hear him in the postgame show like, oh, we had Juan Soto coming up. Well, you got to figure that they're going to walk him in that situation. And you have Cade Smith, a guy who's a fireballer who has the propensity of striking out a guy like Pete Alonso. I don't know. We didn't have as many chances as he depicted in the post game. So I hope he's not thinking like that on the bench, because you're just wrong. You're wrong. You got to start thinking of what the other manager's going to do to counter your moves. We are almost last in innings pitched. I didn't know that. I'm not surprised. Innings pitched with starters? Is that what you mean? Starters? I mean, that's what you probably got to mean. And I'm looking at the lineup. It's tough. It's tough. You just really had production. I was asking the last couple of games, you need production at the top. Production at the top. You really had bunched up production. Lindor, Soto, Alonso. That's really where you had your production. Lindor, 2 hits. Soto, 2 hits. Alonso, 4 hits. McNeil, a hit. And then you have an offer from Vientos. You have an offer for Mullins. You have an offer for Mauricio. You had a late inning hit from Beatty. And then you had 1 hit from Alvarez. And then you had an offer from Nimmo. So you had 5 out of 6 guys in a row not get on base. So it's going to be hard to string anything together if you're not having that type of balance. Just feels like every single damn starting pitcher from the other team, every Slade, Ciccone, I don't know how the heck you say his name, from the Guardians. Every single, you get these pitchers, and all of a sudden they're throwing shutouts against the Mets lineup. Like we struggle with a lot of, I think, a mediocre pitching. And I don't really want to jinx this, but when I was maybe I don't even want to say this, but when I was watching Manaea in the sixth inning, to me on TV, so it's I'm not at the game, I'm not in the dugout. It's hard for me to see. Um, and I haven't really been tracking the velocity of Manaea. Well, actually, let me look it up because Manaea's velocity looked way down. I guess I'm comparing it to last year, but it looked like he was getting 89. I think the highest he got on the fastball was 92. The thing I don't want to say is I hopefully he's not hurt or it's got a tired arm or anything along those lines. I'm just hoping it's still the fact that he's still building up his arm, still ramping it up from being out all year. Okay, so yeah, I'm so 100% right. So his fastball velocity is down in the last couple of years. So 2023, it was 93.6. So that was almost 94 miles per hour. 2024, it was 92.3. 2025, it's 91.5. So it's 2.5 miles per hour down from a couple years ago, 2 years ago, and it's a little more than 1.5 miles down from last year. So again, it could be a thing where he needs to ramp it up. And I guess it would make sense too, because the first 5 innings he looked more or less lights out. He didn't have a problem. That kind of just indicates that somebody just a player just ran into a wall. I don't think he had control. I think he a couple of times he tried throwing it. It was just like sailing up in the zone. Like when you throw a sinker, you want to keep it. I guess you want to keep it lower in the zone. As a batter, I guess it would hard to see sink if the ball is chest high. But yeah, if he's not locating, why is he not locating? The guy got tired in the sixth inning, and also too, why is his velocity down? I don't know. The thing is, he's 33, going to be 34 years old. The Mets gave him a 3-year contract. They gave him a 3-year contract based on like the last 2.5 months of last year. That's when he really accelerated into that number 2 pitcher. So, but was he a number 2 pitcher for most of his career? No, he wasn't. Manaea wasn't a number 2 pitcher most of his career. So if he regresses more to the mean of his career, more towards a 3-4, right now, Kodai Senga and David Peterson, they would be bumped up. Clay Holmes is a little bit more unreliable because he's limited innings-wise. Yeah, I mean, I would like last year he was 12-6 Manaea with a 3.47 ERA. I would say he was probably a legit number 2/3. Again, towards the second half of the year, he really took it to another level. But before that, this guy was a number 4, number 5. So I'm just hoping whatever he did at the end of last year, he starts to get back to that. And it's going to take building up that arm. I mean, this is really why I wanted to add another pitcher. Whether it was, and it didn't have to be an Alcantara. It really didn't have to be an Alcantara. I would have took the guy from Arizona, just a very good, solid professional arm, a guy who could slot in number 3 in your rotation. Because of the fact that, again, Manaea is building up his arm. Senga, he's a guy who pitched 5 innings last year. 5 innings. Holmes is a guy who pitched, I believe, 68 innings is the high out of the pen. You're double that now. Peterson, right now, one of your better pitchers is in new territory. He's pitched right now. He's at the innings. How many innings? The most amount of innings he's ever pitched in his career was 121. Right now, he's at 100, I believe 127. So he's over his most innings in his career is this year. So you have all of your pitchers with all of these, kind of question marks. Everybody's doing things they've never done, or haven't done in a while. Clay Holmes never pitched as many innings. David Peterson never pitched this many innings. Sean Manaea, you're counting him to be an ace or number two. Never been an ace or number two. Kodai Senga only pitched 5 innings last year. I mean, so there's a lot of question marks here, and you're hoping that David Stern's pitching lab, the lore, the allure, the enamored David Stern's pitching lab. You're hoping that it produces results with this pitching staff, but also, again, the Mets plan that they didn't get any acquisition at the trade deadline. Their plan is they're going to use their prospect. They're going to bring up their prospects. So we're going to see some talented arms in the near future. Dom Hamill, he is the first guy. He's not a top prospect, but he is a Mets prospect. I don't know why I always mispronounce his name, but the guy that I thought was going to be here first, everybody was saying Sproat, but the guy that I thought was going to be here first, besides like a Dom Hamill, would probably be a Nolan McLean. And McLean, just so his profile is 24 years old, 6'2", righty, 214 pounds. This year, he is in AAA. So he's in AAA. He started the year in AA. Overall, he's 8-5, 2.6 ERA, 2.6 ERA with a 1.14 whip. He's got 113 Ks in 104 innings, and he has 44 walks. So he's been he was very nasty in AA, decent to solid in AAA. So that is the guy that, I would expect to see. I definitely would expect to see. And, McLean, his velocity is 94 to 96. He can top out, according to his scouting report, as much as 98 miles per hour. He did that in college. His big, huge pitch is the sweeping slider. The spin rate, elite spin rate, over 3,000 RPM, and the horizontal movement is upwards of 20 inches. So the guy, I mean, that's a nasty combo. I mean, if you're a guy who can hit up to 98 miles per hour and you have a nasty sweeping slider, and I know it's all about location, but those two pitchers are, pretty decent. And he also, McLean uses the pitch well running against back foot of lefties. He also has a low 90s cutter, and he mixes up an upper 80s changeup and rarely throws a 70-mile-per-hour curveball. So he's got a pretty decent, developed pitch mix, 5-6 pitches that he's already developed, but mostly the fastball and the sweeping slider is the monster pitch. So Nolan McLean, I like to see him. I mean, we've been hearing about him for the last couple years. Hey, Bob. You know what? You write something pretty good. Cut Stanek, move Montes to long man, BP, call up McLean. I think you got to be aggressive right now. Something like that is not out of the realm. Really not out of the realm. Like, it's not time to play games. The only thing with that is, I guess they still want to develop. They still want to build up Montes's arm. Like, just in case. Unless you want to give up on him as a starter already, do we all want to give up on Montez as a starter and just make him a long man out of the pen? I don't know. I mean, if he fails as a long man out of the pen, what's the next step? I mean, then he's not on the team anymore. But I agree with cutting Stanek. That's a good aggressive move. Calling up McLean, I agree with that. The Montes thing, that's a little tricky. But I guess McLean would have to take his spot in the rotation. So That's very aggressive. That is very aggressive. And you know what? One game under 500 in the last 55 games, that a move like that or a series of moves like that might be the kick in the pants that this team actually really needs. I hear a lot of people looking at all the positives, all the positives. Oh, Vientos is looking good as of late. Pete's getting on fire. He's on fire. That is good. You look at all these little individual positive, all these individual wins. The Mets came back from 5 runs down. It's not good enough unless the Mets win. I mean, that's the thing. Like, you could put all these positives together, but if they're not amounting to wins, who the heck cares? Like teams like the Phillies and the Dodgers and the Padres, you know, yeah. Alonso got a 3-run homer. The Mets lost. Yeah, I mean, I'm not happy. I'm not happy unless my team looks good, feels good, and we are building something. Right now, it just feels like we've been stagnant for way too long. For 2 months, treading water, a little under treading water because we're a game under 500. Well, not good enough. Juan, you're right. Montas shouldn't have even been on this team. Well, I said that. That was the one move or one of the moves that I was very unhappy about. I felt that I took a lot of flack on that, he's coming on. He had a good couple games with the Brewers. I never saw Montez as a good pitcher. When he was with the Yankees, I kind of saw him up close. Didn't impress me at all. And injury prone, same thing on the Mets. Injury prone and not impressing me at all. So I guess the Mets feel that he could have been this year's Luis Severino. It didn't end up happening. It's not happening as of right now. In the next month or so, can he take it to the next level? I guess that would surprise a lot of folks because I'm not seeing it. He's been a bum his entire career. Yeah, I guess he had that one good year, but like majority, I would say 90% of his career has been very underwhelming. But then again, this is what David Stearns does. Like we were talking about before, Manaea, most of his career, he's had an over 4 ERA. So Manaea feels he has this ability, not Manaea, Stearns feels he has this ability to take guys like Manaea, Severino, Montas, and get the best out of them. But not every pitcher is susceptible to elevating their performance. Not every situation can work the same. So, I think sometimes you got to cut your losses. So, Bob, I'm in agreement with Bob. I don't mind. Like, the Mets may want to work this experiment a little more out with Montes, but I'm okay. If the guy's not talented, he's not talented. If the Mets are unable to recognize that the guy's not talented and they're going to stretch it and they're going to waste 4, 5, 6 more starts with him, as opposed to putting in a young kid, and now you can use that time to develop the kid and you can utilize the kid's talent. If you think the kid has more talent now than Montes has, then what are we talking about? We're supposed to be putting the best player on the field that we have in the organization, right? It's supposed to be playing the best players, and if the kid's ready, the kid's ready. I'm talking about him because he's in AAA. So he's at the last step of, supposed development. A guy like Jonah Tong, another top Mets prospect, he's in AA. Is he a guy that you could bring up? Yeah, you could bring him up. But, the Mets have plans for these kids. So that might be a little further stretch. Maybe we see him, later in the season. But that's why I said McClain, Tong. I mean, Sproat, he's a guy who's been pitching a lot better as of late. He's another option. But the good thing is here, the good thing about rattling off these names is the Mets, their top 5 prospects, 3 of them are pitchers. Last year and the year before that, like all of their top 10 were hitters. And I think you had Blade Tidwell sitting around 9 or 10. Now you have multiple good top viable options. And I think that really influenced Stern. It really did. Instead of giving up prospects for a pitcher that could be mediocre or a pitcher that is going to be leaving at the end of this year, a la Dylan Cease, and then having to pay them a crap load of money. All right, let's not surrender our prospects. Let's not pay the money. Let's just develop what we have. So that is, and I also think that these kids could really, give a jolt to the teams, some young energy. Again, like seeing a guy like Lindor on the field, I'm not feeling that same energy that I felt last year. Yeah, Juan, that's a good point. Mets should get pitchers that can locate. I don't care about spin rate or speed. Greg Maddux was a god because he can locate. Yeah, Greg Maddux, he had the whole package. I mean, he had the talent. Obviously, he could locate, but it was he had an interesting quote, and I think I said this a long time ago. He would say that 60% of the game is mental. So, his time, obviously, he would do his pitching drills, he would do his exercises, but he would also spend 60% of his time preparing on his mental approach. I think that is a lost art. I think that's a very big art, and the best teams are the strongest mentally. And I think last year, when the playoffs came around, I was very impressed by our team. Like we really came through at very tough moments, like Lindor, those big hits at the end of the season. We are very mentally strong. Pete Alonso, Mark Vientos, in the playoffs, we had great performances. So that's why when we got a guy like Juan Soto, who's had a great playoff track record, I was super, pumped, because I'm like, you put that together with some of the strong mental players that we have, that's going to be, really good. And that was another reason why I didn't want to let go of Mark Vientos for Luis Robert Jr., because I knew that Mark Vientos, although he's struggling, he was a guy that showed great mental toughness in a very stressful situation. And I did not want to take that away from him. And I really didn't. I want to see this guy grow. I don't want to lose any young players and see them prosper on other teams. We already saw him prosper last year on our team. We saw him hit. We saw him mash. We saw him do a lot of great things. The only downfall to him is, obviously, we know he doesn't have a position. But the beauty of it right now, as it sits in the National League, we have a DH. So we essentially, even though he's positionless, we have a position for Mark Vientos. And when you think back to all the crappy DHs we've had in the past couple of years, and I don't know why, but Vogelbach always comes to the top of my head. We haven't had many, and we are still searching for that number 5 hitter. But I'm telling you, Ronnie Mauricio is. I envision him in that number 5 spot. I envision him in that number 5 spot very, very soon. And who knows next year if Pete decides to leave. But I'm kind of like falling more and more in love with Pete, even though I've always loved the guy. But, after last year, I expected a lot and my expectations were let down. But this year, Pete's showing all heart. And, you can't deny that from the guy. They probably had no value. I mean, what were we going to get back? Acuna's ice cold. If you look at his baseball savant, it looks like a little leaguer. Beatty's been shown that he's extremely streaky. I mean, he probably has a slightly more value, but again, both those two guys, you probably would have been better off keeping them, because what were you going to get back? I mean, if there's no way you were going to get back any. I mean, I don't think you were getting back any decent relievers. I mean, it's it's tough. I had Acuna on my. I had a bunch of players on my list that I would have traded. Acuna was at the top of the list. I even had Beatty on the list, but I just think that the value wasn't proportionate where Stearns is like, all right, it's worth trading these guys. I think if it was worth trading, he definitely would have done it because we still have that logjam. We still have a logjam with McNeil, and you add Mullen into the mix, which means you can't even put McNeil in center field. That even makes the infield logjam even worse. So definitely, if there was a deal out there to get rid of one of these guys, he probably would have done it. It just wasn't out there. But I'll say this, even though he only had one hit, Alvarez is looking a lot better. I want to mention that. He is looking a lot better with his swing. So that is one promising thing. Because we need obviously more consistency out of the end of the lineup as well. Whole lineup for that matter. I was just looking into like the Dom Hamill, the Mets bringing in Dom Hamill. So like I don't know. So some sports writers are saying that the Mets brought up Dom Hamill and bypassed Sproat, bypassed McLean, but obviously there's a plan to bring them up eventually. But manager Carlos Mendoza, Dom Hamill, by the way, is 26. So Mendoza goes, obviously, I'm proud of him. It's not easy. This was a guy, a prospect, came up as a starter. And then when you get the news, you're not going to start. We're going to put you in the bullpen. He understood it. He kept working and put himself in a position when there was a need at the big league level. His name came up, and here he is. He can provide length. He's got pitchers. He can go multiple innings. So I'm very excited to have him. So that was Mendoza's take on adding a guy like Dom Hamill to the team. Dom Hamill, for his part, he told reporters on Monday that he considers his conversion to the bullpen as a potential reason as to why he got the nod over McLean and over Brandon Sproat, because those guys are dedicated to or they're going to be safe for the starting rotation. So Mets leadership sold him on the idea. Given McLean and Sprout also would be vying for starting jobs. I've thrown at least 115 to 120 innings the last 4 years of my career and felt good handling the workload. So I was a little bitter at, oh, wow. Oh, this is funny. So he goes, so I was a little bitter at first, but just because I know I can handle that type of workload, Hamill said. So he said he was a little bitter about making the change to the bullpen, but he said he was only bitter because he's used to working a lot. But it's got to hurt. If you're a starter your whole life and all of a sudden now you see Sproat better than you, McLean better than you, Jonah Tonk better than you. Dom Hamill, he was a top prospect a couple years ago. Now he's 26. Hasn't panned out. How are the Mets going to utilize him? All right, put him in the bullpen. He's got some decent stuff. See if he can play there. And Dom Hamill, which is good for him to say, he goes, I believe in myself to do it at the next level. But there are really good guys up here, really good starters and relievers. One of the things we talked about with the office is that there might be more opportunity in this kind of role, and that role being the bullpen. Like I said, I like these players who are, they'll go anywhere. They will go anywhere They will play any position, whatever it takes to win. I mean, those are winning players. Winning players will, do anything. Some players they want to be the star. you know, but just so he's been in Syracuse, Dom Hamill. So that's AAA. He's had 22 games, pitched in 22 games, 53 innings this year, 4.73 ERA, 1.256 whip, 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. So his numbers don't blow you away, but it's more than just the numbers. Let me see what type of stuff he has. So in Dom Hamill, he was the 27th ranked prospect. All right, so he is 6'2". He is a right-hander. So he's got a 91 to 94 mile per hour fastball. He's got a 79 to 82 mile per hour sweeping slider, and he's got a mid-80s changeup. So, I mean, in terms of pitch arsenal, and I mean, that just seemed like, in this day and age, just, I guess mid-level stuff. And then the numbers aren't really overly impressive. And fastball and slider would be his two best pitchers. All right, so we'll see what he can do out of the bullpen. We'll see what the pitching lab does with a guy like Dom Hamill. Very excited for him. Great job. If the Mets could turn him into a useful chip, a useful piece, all the better. Maybe trade chip in the future. And that's also interesting. Let's say 26-year-old Dom Hamill. You bring him up. You develop him the last 2 months of this year. Next year, bullpen pieces went for a pretty penny. I mean, if he does great, keep him. But if the Mets have a stacked bullpen last year, maybe that's a guy you can dangle. That's a guy you could dangle at maybe a future trade deadline. So let's see how Stearns plays chess. He's supposed to be an upper echelon general manager. I know he's a president, but he does make these trades and transactions. So I'm interested to see, especially in future trade deadlines, how does he wow us? How does he, really take this thing to the next level? Because obviously, he's got the resources with the New York Mets. Hey, what's up, Sal? All right, let's see what you got here. Pete needs to stay away from implying a moral victory. It's a freaking loss. Got to start winning games, especially with one of the toughest schedules in the majors. Okay, so I agree with you 100%. There's no moral victories. There is no moral victories at all. Let me leave this up. There's no moral victories at all. But the only thing is with Pete, what he puts out there in the media is got to be different than what he puts in the clubhouse. Got to be different. So if he says something that implies a moral victory in the media, all right. You're trying to save face for the other guys in your team. But if you're in that clubhouse, you better make damn well you're putting pressure on those other guys that there's no such thing as a moral victory. All these players say crap all the time to us that, it doesn't mean anything. If they're saying that in a clubhouse, again, Sal, I'm 100% with you. There's no such thing as a moral victory, especially when you have over $300 million in payroll. You just spent $800 million on Juan Soto. We just traded, not the best prospects, but a crap load of prospects to enhance our bullpen. We have all the resources in the world. Steve Cohen he's losing money. He's losing money. In order to make money, he's investing in this team. But right now, we are currently losing money. So we better put our best foot forward And, it is Pete's last year too with us. I'm pretty sure he does want to win a World Series. But right now, again, I'm not feeling it. We could turn this around in a week or two. In a couple of days, we could turn this around. We're a very streaky team, but streaky teams don't win World Series. Hot teams win World Series. So hopefully we get to that point very, very soon. And I agree with you on one point, Sal. It's got to be about attitudes too. We all have to be pulling in the same direction. We're only as good as our weakest link. Shore up the weakest links on the team. And I think that's what Stearns was trying to do by improving center field. Center field, that was a weak link. Tyrone Taylor, putting him into the a different role, fourth outfielder, pinch runner, defensive back, defensive, replacement. I think that's going to suit him a lot more. Cedric Mullins, I got to see more. He could have had a huge hit. It's Cedric Mullins tonight. This very night could have been a hero. Second baseman made a huge stop that would have prevented, or that did prevent 2 runs from scoring. So Cedric Mullins, I haven't seen enough out of him, but I like the energy that I'm getting out of him. He already talked about winning championships with New York. He's here 5 minutes. He's talking about winning championships. I like players like that. So upgrading our weakest link, we upgraded that. Bullpen, weakest link, upgraded that. Hopefully starters doesn't turn out to be our weakest link. But again, the backup plan was always to bring up some of the young talent from the minors to, I guess whatever the starters aren't working out, you bring up starters from the minors and they will, I guess, take their spots. Frankie Montas is not going to have too much of an option pretty soon. I missed this. That Moneyball crap doesn't work. It's tough. Like, when you got a $300 million payroll, I think we did more Moneyball crap last year. Although I'll say this. Without Steve Cohen, we wouldn't have Juan Soto. I think that's pretty well stated. We wouldn't have Juan Soto. I don't think Juan Soto would have picked us over the Yankees if Steve Cohen wasn't here. That's number one, right? So that had nothing to do with David Stearns. And then also, too, I don't think we'd have Pete Alonso without Steve Cohen. David Stearns, I don't think he was a David Stearns guy, Pete Alonso. And then if you look at our offense and you take out Pete Alonso and you take out Juan Soto, what the heck is our offense? We'd probably be the worst offense in all of baseball. That being said, if you have a bad offense, your pitching staff should be an elite pitching staff. And we've seen as of late, our pitching staff, starting pitchers have been nothing, close to elite. So I could just imagine without Steve Cohen and without his, extra efforts this offseason, where the hell would this team be? Where the hell would this team be? Hey, Jason, mistakes. Damn, this team finds ways to lose. Yep. There's no way sugarcoating. This team is not a cohesive unit. We're not going out there with the right it doesn't seem like we're going out there with the right mindset. Greg Maddux said that this game is 60% mental. Worked on it 60% of the time, the mental approach. These New York Mets have to work on that part of the game as well because there are too many mental errors. Brett Beatty, mental error. Francisco Lindor, not scooping these balls, mental error. There's just it's just something that at this level, it just really shouldn't happen. It really should not happen. But we are missing what we had last year. We certainly are. And everybody goes back to Iglesias, and I even go back to like the energy Iglesias brought. It's just hard to fathom that one guy was the guy who made everything gel. But then when I look at him on the field when we played the Padres, I mean that guy, I guess everybody loved him, and he was a leader. I mean, I could definitely see him as a future manager, Jose Iglesias. So, but we are missing that element. Should the Mets take a flyer on Stroman? Gotta be better than Montas. No question mark. I gotta say a quick no for that one. I gotta say a quick no. I mean, besides the fact that Stroman has been horrendous this year, I want guys who are team players. Stroman already told the Yankees, I don't want to go to the bullpen, right? And I think that if he was a little more open, I think he still would have been with the Yankees. So, do I want a guy who's that rigid and and he's not having a good year, and he's not having a good year, and he's made some controversial comment? I'm not even talking about the controversial comment. I'm just talking about the guy's willingness to be a team player and his production on the field. So his production on the field is not there, and his willingness to be a team player is not there. So that his value is at an all-time low. If he comes out there and he says a bunch of things, maybe another team will pick him up. I just don't think he's really right for the New York Mets. Going back down that road, I'd rather go down the road of so many other options. Really, we have options in the minor leagues that I'd much rather have. And then you also have the Tyler McGills, Paul Blackburn. Not saying I want to go down that road either, but I'd rather go down the Blackburn road first, Paul Blackburn, than Stroman. At least Blackburn seems to be a team player. What's up, buddy? I've calmed down now, thanks to you. I agree with your take on the trade deadline. We improved the bullpen, the lineup with Mullins, and the kids coming up in mid-August. Improve the starting rotation. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, tonight was a very frustrating loss, and it's never acceptable. Never going to be acceptable. But this team really has too much talent to just continue to sink. It really doesn't. And at the end of the day, as you reiterated, the Mets do have a plan. The Mets do have a plan. And the one thing that I did like tonight, I'll name a couple of things. You had a good 5 strong innings from Manaea, right? Then he lost it. He got tired. That's fine. Still building up his arms. You saw a good 5 innings. You saw Alonso just totally dominate this game. Put everybody on his back, saying, get on my back. Obviously hit that big 3-run homer, 1 home run short of the Mets all-time record. That was great for everybody to witness, everybody to feel that excitement. Alonso, another positive. That's positive number 2. Positive number 3 is the bullpen. After the 5 runs, the Mets did a very good job with the bullpen. Very good job. Besides the 10th, when we made an error, you had Raley come in, gave up no runs. Rogers came in, gave up a hit, no runs. Reed Garrett came in, a hit, no run. I'm sorry, he gave up no hits. He gave up no runs. And Diaz came in. He gave 1 hit, and literally he danced around a runner. Obviously didn't let anybody score. So you had 1, 2, 3. So 4 1/3 innings of shutout baseball from the bullpen. And that was a priority that we took care of. And you saw a result early on. It was unfortunate that we couldn't play clean baseball in the 10th. And it was unfortunate that we couldn't scratch another run in the 8th and the 9th. So, but the bullpen really kind of did its job. And that was one of the things that we were concerned about. All right, folks. So, it's 12 o'clock on the dot. So I'm just going to ask, if you didn't hit the like button before you go, hit that like button. Do me a favor. We're going to do more of these lives. So I want to start talking. It helps me get out some frustration. If you're frustrated as well, I appreciate all the comments, the participation. Everybody was great tonight. I had a good night. I will talk to everybody soon. And again, at the end of the day, it can only get better. We've had a lot of losing lately. Things have to change very, very soon. Very, very soon. So tomorrow might be one of our best games all year, and I wouldn't be surprised. Have a great night, everyone. Have a great night. Let's go, Mets.